Hello, everyone. Brother Al McLean with this week's stewardship video. As we make this video, this is August 21st. We are almost at the end of October. We are in the thick of earning seasons, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But before we go too far, to read the disclaimer, no advice should be seen as a recommendation or endorsement, as I am not a licensed financial advisor and is for educational purposes only. Please do your own research, or if you don't have a financial advisor, reach out, find one. Kingdom Advisors is a good place to use as a reference, or I think they call them preferred providers, or it's through Dave Ramsey's group. So just two resources you can use if you're looking for a financial advisor. So I get these Facebook memories like some of you probably also do. And this one popped up as a Facebook memory from 3 years ago. So October 18, 2020, there was a quote from Dave Ramsey that was October 17, 2020, and it said, "Discipline today leads to options tomorrow." That's discipline today leads to options tomorrow. And I thought about 3 years ago what I was doing as far as debt, as far as spending plan, as far as my giving. I couldn't remember the specifics, but I know it's the same principles and concepts that I was using form as a foundation, which is given to God first, utilizing biblical principles. So as I look at where I am today, it was a result of discipline or habits or consistency from yesteryears. So Hebrews 12 and 11 was also a verse that came up this week in one of my devotionals, and it said in the Amplified Classic Edition, "For the time being, no discipline brings joy, but seems grievous and painful. But afterwards, it yields a peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." And the Amplified says, "A harvest of fruit which consists in righteousness, in conforming to God's will, in purpose, thought, and action, resulting in right living and right standing with God," which is what that righteousness is. Righteous toward God is right standing toward God, right living toward God. And I think about now, when we're talking about discipline, of course, we remember when our parents disciplined us, or when we were in school and they had corporal punishment, which was paddling. That was definitely not joyful. But it's also the self-discipline. You think about it, and I'm not as good as some of you, but like going to the gym every day. I've got a Deacon Ron McClellan, and I think he used to always go to the gym, but now I think he was reflecting in a leadership meeting how his son now works at a early shift of FedEx. I want to say it's like 3 in the morning. And then he drops him off, and now he goes to the gym, I think, like 4 in the morning. And so he's just continued that discipline through the years. If it's right eating, or in our case, stewardship, starting with that habit, and it's a spiritual discipline of giving to God first, spiritual discipline of praying over our finances, a spiritual discipline of reading our Bible daily. That's discipline. At the time, it may not be pleasant getting up in the morning, going to the gym, or setting aside each day to do, for instance, my Bible study fellowship homework, or from a biblical finances, making sure we not only author and draft a budget, but execute that budget. Bishop T.D. Jakes says, "Have a plan and work your plan." So in the beginning, we know forming that habit and being consistent with it sometimes doesn't bring us joy, but we know later on there is, as the scripture says, a harvest of fruit. So I thought about a well-known story in the Bible, and that's the Good Samaritan. And you may not think of this as a biblical, a stewardship principle, but it is. And I encourage you to go back and read all of Luke 10, specifically verses 30, the section about the Good Samaritan. And we know, if we give a quick summary, the Good Samaritan was someone who was traveling along the road of Jericho. And this was a road where many robbers happened. And he came upon someone who had been robbed, because this was a well-known strip of road in which people would get robbed. And in this case, the person had been attacked, and the Good Samaritan uh, saw this person who his clothes had been taken, he'd been beat and left half dead alongside the road. But a priest came by, and they went to the other side, and someone else came. A religious man showed up, and he avoided the person, but it was the Good Samaritan. And Jesus told this story because Samaritans were despised people by the Jewish. They were looked down upon. And there was a book that I think Tony Evans penned about racism, and he uses, I think, the Good Samaritan or Samaritans as the backdrop of that. So Jesus, in telling a story, would have brought on a lot of indignation from the Jewish people because Samaritans were despised. But he said the Samaritan traveling the road, and this is a message about it, came on him. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting, bandaging his wounds. Then he lifted upon him a donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning, he took 2 silver coins, gave it to the innkeeper, saying, "Take good care of him. If it costs any more, put it on my bill, and I'll pay you on my way back." So here's the steward. You probably never looked at it as a stewardship, but think of this. The Good Samaritan had to have been practicing discipline and consistency with his finances before he even ran into this individual. What do I mean by that? He had margin in his budget so that he can give money to the innkeeper. He had good credit because the innkeeper believed he was going to come back and make good on anything that wasn't covered by the money. He had a donkey, so he had resources. All these are stewardship principles because of prior planning and discipline before. That's how the Samaritan came up with these resources and money and good credit. He also, because he had probably been focusing on his own finances, that he wasn't worried by them. Maybe that religious leader or that priest didn't have any resources or finances, or they're so caught up in their own worries or in their own self-image that they weren't looking around, or they saw him, but they didn't want to be bothered because they were so into what they were dealing with. In this case, Samaritan spotted him, and he was able to have the resources to take action. He was able to affect this person's life and be generous. So that's what, go back and read that and look at it from a stewardship point of view. You know, can I be a good Samaritan today, or do my finances, because I haven't been disciplined and been about consistency in doing things, that I don't have any margin? So think about that when you look at that and read that story. So this week, we're going into the 23rd, and this is the calendar month view I've been putting up before, and you can see it gives you the full view of the month of October, which is a heavy earnings month because it's the end of the quarter, third quarter reporting, and we're going into fourth quarter. So these were companies are reporting how they did in the third quarter. So let's zoom in and take a look at October 23rd. This is the week we're going into. So you'll recognize many of these names, and some of them may be in your 401k by way of mutual fund, or some of you may be working at these companies, or some of you may be investing in these companies. So if you have any exposure to QQQ or NASDAQ or the S&P 500, these companies are going to be represented in there. You got Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Alphabet, Visa, 3M. We've got Boeing, Meta, which is the old Facebook, IBM, UPS, Amazon, ExxonMobil, Chevron. I don't need to say it. You're already thinking it. The market is going to move next week, right? There's going to be some movement. You know, it could end up massively unchanged, but throughout the week, it's going to be moving and responding and reacting to these earnings. Either if they missed, or they blew it out of the water, or they got the earnings, and like the financials that were reporting last week, they may have made their earnings, but their forward looking was, we don't expect to earn this the next quarter. So there is going to be some movement next week. So pay attention. This is a big earnings week. So let's look at how year to date we're doing in the different sectors. S&P is still up on the year, 10%. Now, it was up 17% earlier this year, but, you know, starting to drift down a little bit, probably because of these right here: financial, healthcare, materials, real estate, and now utilities. And it makes sense. Utilities tend to be in healthcare, tend to be places that people run to for safety. Right now, everyone has still been looking at technology and consumer and communication services. Consumer discretionary is still going. In fact, there were some spending reports that came out that said spending is still going. The economy hasn't slowed down. So what that meant, and you'll see it in the graph and chart that we end off with, is that means that most likely the Federal Reserve is not through increasing rates because the economy is still going. It's still fast, not slowing down. So let's look at how we ended the week. You can see kind of started off the week in this area and down for the week. And you can see we started like around, this is like the kind of the beginning of the week, and then we ended going through this area of resistance so we could go down another couple of legs because we broke through that. And this is QQQ, which is a big representative of the NASDAQ technology. Look at SPY. Same thing. And what probably prompted this is, as we said, we got the war in Israel with Hamas. We still have the Ukrainian war. We still have the economy is still on fire, and which means that, as we said, most likely interest rates will still be ratcheted up by the Federal Reserve. And we had the financials report, and they really didn't set the world on fire with their earnings. And I saw a news of mortgage rates all-time high. I mean, or 5 or 6 year high. So that's where we are. We'll be tuning in next week to see, maybe we're going to be bouncing in between these support and resistance. And if we break through this particular support, I'm going to draw another line here and come up with the levels that it could go down to. As always, thank you for your support. Like and subscribe. Go out on YouTube. You can search under my name. Some of you are have subscribed. Thank you very much. And you get notifications. Or you can go to SJBC or email dcraddock@sjbcfamily.com, and she can put you on a distribution list for not only St. John Baptist Church, but embedded within there is the weekly stewardship video. So as my pastor, Denny Dwight Davis, says, keep a good spirit, have a good week. We say on the stewardship video each week, remember, Jesus is Lord, therefore he's the owner, but we are his faithful stewards, and we want to be disciplined in following his principles. See you next week.